8 freaky school lockdown stories you won't forget. Story 1. The mysterious intruder in the high school hallways. In 2018, the students at Hillcrest High School were thrown into a terrifying lockdown when an anonymous caller reported a potential armed intruder on campus. The entire school was locked down, the lights were turned off, and everyone was instructed to hide under desks. As they sat in silence, hoping for the best, strange noises echoed through the halls, footsteps pacing, muffled shouting, and the sound of doors rattling. One student, who had been hiding with a group of friends, peered out the window and saw a shadowy figure moving near the gymnasium doors. The figure seemed to be lingering outside, never leaving the premises, and this only heightened the panic inside. The school went into full lockdown mode, and authorities arrived quickly, only to find no evidence of an intruder. The police eventually determined that the call was a hoax, but the students and staff remained shaken by the experience. It wasn't until later that one of the teachers admitted to hearing footsteps too, but no one ever saw who was making them. Some still wonder if there was someone or something lurking in the halls that day. Story 2. The hidden figure in the tie. Lockdown drill at Jefferson High School. A seemingly routine lockdown drill in 2016 turned into a spine-chilling event. During the drill, the students and staff were asked to hide in classrooms with the doors locked and blinds drawn. As the school went silent, an eerie feeling settled in the air. One teacher, Mr. Carter, was in the back of the classroom with his students when he noticed something strange through the crack of the door, a figure standing still in the hallway. Mr. Carter thought it was another staff member checking the classrooms, but as the figure didn't move for several minutes, he grew uneasy. Upon closer inspection, he saw that the figure had no discernible features, just a shadowy outline against the fluorescent lighting. He quickly told the students to stay down, but when he opened the door to check, the figure was gone. When the lockdown ended and staff members checked the hallways, no one had seen anything unusual. However, several students later reported that they too had noticed someone, or something, moving silently through the halls during the lockdown. No one could explain it, but the atmosphere inside the school remained tense for weeks after. Story 3. The unseen entity. During the tornado. Lockdown in 2012, students at Riverside High School were undergoing a lockdown due to a tornado warning. The atmosphere was already tense as the students huddled in the hallways, their faces pale as the storm raged outside. But as the minutes turned into hours, something strange began happening. A group of students in one of the locker rooms reported hearing a series of tapping noises, odd rhythmic sounds that didn't match the noise of the storm. The noises seemed to be coming from above, like fingers tapping against the ceiling tiles. The students tried to ignore it, but the tapping grew louder and more erratic, almost as if something was trying to break through. When the lockdown was finally lifted, the staff and security personnel checked the roof and attic space but found nothing out of the ordinary. The strange tapping stopped as soon as the lockdown ended, leaving the students wondering if something had been trapped in the walls during the storm, or if there had been a much darker presence in the building that day. Story 4. The creepy whispering. In the locker room, in 2015, during a lockdown at Northfield Academy, a small group of students was gathered in the locker room, nervously waiting for the lockdown to be lifted. As they sat in the silence, something chilling began to happen. They heard soft whispering voices coming from the back of the locker room, but when they turned to look, no one was there. One student, Hannah, decided to investigate, walking towards the darkened corner of the room. As she got closer, the whispering seemed to intensify, and it became clear that the voices weren't speaking English. They were a garbled, unintelligible murmur, like a foreign language or an eerie chant. Hannah quickly ran back to her friends, and the group huddled together, terrified. When the lockdown finally ended, the security footage was reviewed, but it showed no one else entering the locker room. No explanations were given, and the students were left with an unsettling sense that something paranormal had taken place in those moments of isolation. Story 5. The fake lockdown. That turned real in 2017. A school lockdown drill at Crestwood Middle School turned into a horrifying real-life experience. The school had recently been undergoing a series of lockdown drills, and the students were becoming more accustomed to the routine. But during one drill, a sudden unannounced lockdown caught the school off guard. Teachers and students rushed to secure their classrooms as the lockdown alarm blared. As the minutes passed in silence, students in a biology class noticed something off. There was a faint sound of footsteps pacing outside the door, just slow, deliberate steps that seemed to circle the classroom. The students huddled in fear, certain that something was wrong. When the lockdown ended, the school administration quickly informed everyone that it had been a routine drill, but several students reported the strange footsteps outside their doors. Wasn't until later that night that the truth came out. Someone had entered the school grounds during the lockdown, hoping to cause trouble. Fortunately, no one was harmed, but the haunting feeling of hearing those footsteps still lingers with the students who were present that day. Story 6. The Stranger in the Library. During a lockdown drill at Hillside High School in 2014, a group of students was instructed to gather in the school's library. The school was on high alert due to a nearby threat, and the students were expected to remain silent and calm. As the group settled into a corner of the library, one student noticed a figure sitting at a table at the far end of the room. The figure was a man, someone who definitely wasn't a staff member or student. He was hunched over a stack of books, scribbling in a notebook. The student, curious and nervous, turned to the others to point him out. But when they looked back, the man was gone. No one had seen him leave, and security personnel later assured everyone that no one had entered the library during the lockdown. The sighting of the mysterious stranger left the students on edge. They couldn't shake the feeling that the man had been there to keep an eye on them, or worse, that he might have had darker intentions. No one knew who the man was, and his sudden disappearance made the lockdown even more unnerving. Story 7. The Disappearing Teacher. During lockdown, in 2011, a group of students at Westbrook High School were huddled in their classrooms during a lockdown caused by a nearby shooting. Everything was silent, the only sound being the occasional muttered conversation between students. But in one classroom, something truly bizarre happened. One of the teachers, Mr. Franklin, was leading the students in a calming discussion when suddenly he disappeared. The students thought he had gone to check on something or left the room, but when they looked around, there was no sign of him. They waited in confusion, but when the lockdown ended, Mr. Franklin was still nowhere to be found. The students were told by the principal that Mr. Franklin had been evacuated along with the other staff members, but none of the students could remember seeing him leave. The mystery of Mr. Franklin's disappearance during that terrifying lockdown remains unsolved, with many students wondering if something strange, perhaps supernatural, had happened that day. Story 8. The Silent Hallway. Visitor during a lockdown at Maple Grove High in 2019, students were instructed to hide in their classrooms and remain silent. However, a group of students in room 205 reported hearing soft knocking on the door at regular intervals during the lockdown. At first, they assumed it was a teacher or another student trying to communicate, but as the knocking continued, they began to feel uneasy. When one of the students peered out through a crack in the door, they saw a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway. The figure was dressed in dark clothing and appeared to be watching the classroom. When the student quickly pulled away, the knocking stopped, but the figure remained outside the classroom, eerily still. By the time the lockdown ended, the figure was gone. No one had entered the hallway during the lockdown, and no one knew who the shadowy figure had been. The students left the classroom with a growing sense of dread that someone, or something, had been watching them from the outside.